Daniel Kalban is the creator and writer of American Dreams. He credits his love of comics, especially heroes, to his father's old collection of Silver Age comics. He also writes occasional articles for Word of the Nerd when he's not working. He enjoys playing video games, going to museums, and attending the theater. When things are normal, of course. American Dreams exists because of his love for superheroes and history. And today, we're going to talk to him about all of it. Super exciting stuff. So what's American Dreams about?
It's about a Jewish immigrant in 1900s New York named Jake Gold. By day, he's working in a sweatshop. By night, he's basically fighting, in an ethnic gang against other ethnic gangs for what little bit of territory they can get, in the Lower East Side, through the Village, through, all these little ethnic enclaves that were below 14th Street at the time. And around the same time, Thomas Edison comes to J.P. Morgan with this proposal to use this device designed by Nikola Tesla to basically gather energy from the stars to solve basically what he figures is be a future fuel shortage. And then he flips the switch and everything goes horribly, horribly wrong. Or right, depending on your perspective. Jake gains superpowers and he has to figure out what he has to do with them, for good or for ill. And what he does will affect, everything around him.
Right on.
Yeah.
So back to your story and your process. When you write, what emotional place do you create from?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, I have to think about this. Well, it basically comes from a few various directions. One, I need my readers to sympathize with the characters, for good or for ill. Two, I want to write something that's exciting. So because it's superhero comics, we have to have, action and adventure. But three, I also want to kind of, even I might have to sometimes maybe do the back seat to the crux of the story I have to tell for this issue. I like some of this, like, bring awareness to some social, things that, were prevalent then are still pretty prevalent now. But at the end of the day, it's like I want my readers to think yet enjoy themselves. And also, I think I bring some of my own kind of opinions of things about the world into it. So it's like really one simple emotion. It's like a complex mixture of ideas, inspirations, thoughts, what's going on in the world, what's going on, what happened back then, what's going on in the world, and just kind of mashes together.
Do you have a ritual that you do to get yourself primed for writing good superhero content?
Music helps, especially if music fits the scene. I like a lot of orchestral soundtracks, so that helps a lot. So I can just pull up like an overture or a suite or something that helps with it. It helps with also like the rhythm of the scene a bit, somewhat. Because even the scenes that are storytelling have their own conversational rhythm. I used to be not that great at doing outlines. Now I outline more ahead of time, or at least have a series of notes that I want to do beat for beat. But then, like, at the end of the day, I just have to knuckle down and just, write it. I can write a solid script draft in a few hours. But I just have to knuckle down and just, it's like Nike says, just do it. But the music helps, gives a nice tonal feel for the scenes.
So, where do you find your zen? How do you get those gears to line up and just
all of a sudden the right moment comes, it's right, it's time to knuckle down and do it. And I have this horrible thing where I was like, I can do it now, a little later, because work plus everything else. But after a while, it's like I have to get it down. And actually, recently wrote a 4-part western, which someone has already started to draw. Um, but when I was writing, it's like I started writing part one, and I'm like, you know what? Let me write part two, and then by the next day, I'm like, I write part three and part four because I got this nice little groove going. So it's a combination of kind of like, for me, it's like getting to that kind of groove with, I think, notes, and then hitting the right groove with the draft, and just kind of get into the rhythm, and you just again with that rhythm, and you just get into it. Yeah.
So every comic book at some level is a collaboration, where you get a lot of different people together doing a lot of different things, from
Yeah.
editing to artwork and writing and all that fun stuff. What's the how do you make a good collaboration happen?
Communication, I think, is the most key. Um, you, I don't want to be like this whole middle manager thing. I like just constantly like, where's the page? Where's the page? Where's the page? But collaboration, but like if I need something changed, like hopefully I catch it in the pencil stage because my penciler Doty will go to his inker Tebby, and they're using physical paper still. They're not digital. They're still straight on paper. So we have to catch these things like ASAP before the inking stage happens. So basically I get the layout from Doty. I show it to my editors who greenlight it. I tell Doty it's good to go. He sends me the pencils. I show the editors. We make notes if there's anything needs to be changed, and then repeat, for the ink stage, and then also with the colors and letters. But communication is always key because it is a partnership in many, many, many ways, and as banal as that sounds, but if you don't communicate what you want with the artist or colorist or inker or letterer, it's going to be off.
Do you think a lot about digital versus print when you put your books together? I imagine print is sort of just something you do, and digital is rapidly becoming this pervasive reality. What's the process there?
Well, my publisher does it both digitally and physically. I do for the Kickstarters. I do tend to try to do a digital tier, if a physical tier, if I can't afford the physical tier at the moment. Um, I think ultimately, because of we have all these tablets now, it's going to be easier for some people to just read a PDF on their tablet. But for me, I still like reading the hard copy book. So I don't think physical is going to go away. It's going to be more of a hybrid system at the end of the day. Because if you look at Comixology, the digital sales, we don't know them. It's rumored they're not as high still as print sales. So it's still going to be a long road before it gets to the level where digital is overtaking print and you can start.
So, what kind of writer would you say you are? Are you the type of writer that just sort of creates and goes, or do you plan out every detail?
Um, I used to be a lot more fly by the seat of my pants. But nowadays I do, as I said earlier, a lot more outlines and notes. So I just have like a kind of a roadmap of what I want. In fact, I haven't started writing issue 7 yet of American Dreams. Issue 6 is being drawn. But I have I had a plan for issue 7, but at the end of the day, I started saying writing down notes for alternative take for how to do issue 7, which might work better. And I have to decide which between the two still I would rather prefer. But it's one of those things where things that happen in issue 7, let's say version 7A might happen towards the end of the arc, and 7B becomes what actually happens for issue 7. But at the end of the day, I'm still like being more like fly on my pants because like you can plan for everything, but when your characters start pulling you in that other direction, that's better and a little more, exciting. all the outlining in the world's not going to help you. You're going into uncharted waters because how your characters are going.
How do your characters find their voices?
Um, that's a good question. I think you also have to go well because it's a period piece. You have to find like that kind of period feel to them, and also you have to find how they would talk based on their socioeconomic class at the time. But so I think I find with characters like Jake and his family, even though they're immigrants, but he's basically grown up in the United States. His sister was a baby when they got here. His brother's American was born here. Um, they talk more, I think, naturally, like more like how we talk in this modern day. Whereas J.P. Morgan and Thomas Edison and Aleister Crowley, who are constantly three of our main bad guys, talk a little more formally because they're upper class, and so that helps with Aleister Crowley. As I said earlier, he's nuts. He's a little crazy. So he has this kind of little camp, little sneer to his voice. Not camp like stereotype, but more like this little kind of Vincent Price, elegant, nastiness to him, which is always fun to write. Harry Houdini, because he's a showman, you always think there's gonna be a little bit of a ta-da at the very end of his big statements because the master magician. Emma Goldman, because it's always great, give voices also to these historical characters. Emma Goldman, she's blunt. She wants to say what she wants to say, and she's not going to really sugarcoat anything. But because she's also an immigrant whose first language isn't really English, her speech patterns are a little more formal and maybe a little more halting. Because always in my head, I imagine her speaking with a bit of a Russian accent, and then Nellie Bly, again another historical character, because she's upper class, because she was from an upper class family. She's married an upper class businessman as well as being a reporter. She has this more formal way of speaking. Whereas her assistant, though also from the upper class, speaks more regularly like Jake does, and so there's a little more of a easy way to communicate between those two versus him communicating with Nellie or even Emma. But it's like each of these characters need to stand on their own way, so they need to have their own moments when they speak. Otherwise, they're just being a spear carrier, so to speak. Just standing there with maybe little to no lines, and they're just there. But you need the voice to make them kind of show who they are and whatnot. Like Eli, the little brother of Jake, you hear like the excitement and energy when he talks. Though occasionally a little bit of a wiseacre, 10-year-old smirk to it. Or like Becky, their Jake and Eli's sister, the middle child. She talks regularly, but her tone shifts depending on who she's talking to or about. Like Eli, she's the very doting older sister. To Jake, she's the prodding, little sister who's like, I don't believe you actually have superpowers. Prove it. And because because she's working for Harry Houdini as a customer. And it's really funny because she's the one who's working for a magician, yet she's the one who's first to say, really? Superpowers? Here's a steel pipe. Bend it, Hercules. And she becomes dumbfounded. But then you have, and when her boss, Houdini, comes in and sees this, she becomes Miss is very respectful to her boss, but he's the one. But again, it's Houdini, so he's going to respond to this with a little, "Have you thought about show business?" Ta-da! So how the character interactions, I think, also helps their voice, and their voice also changes with who they're interacting with.
Um, so with a project like this, you're sort of reconstructing history. You're creating a new world from a historical world that existed as you would expect with historical fiction. Um, where do you start? It sounds big and complicated.
Well, you have to start with research and Wikipedia, encyclopedias, and biographies, and everything really does help as a start point. But at the end of the day, this is a fictional, take on this historical setting. So I can start with they are here and it would be here at this place in time, but at a certain point I can start diverging here and there because history is already going to be changed. For example, Nellie Bly by 1900 had already retired to be a wife / co-business owner with her husband, whereas American Dreams, she's back to reporting because she wants something to do because she's bored, just staying at home being the wife. So she wants to be back, in the thick of things, reporting for the New York World. So that's the divergence. We have Nikola Tesla building basically a gate machine that we designed basically off of what a Tesla coil looks like. So it's a fancy Tesla coil plus a satellite dish. So that's, again, a divergence. But we're still saying it in a world of, basically, I want to say steampunk, though there's like slight elements to it because of Tesla's invention. And it's a little more further on I have planned. But it's like we have to go back and look at what these things have existed at this point in time. For example, in issue 3, Doty had drawn Houdini with a old-fashioned microphone. And I had to go back and check, and I'm like, wait, would they even have had any microphone at the time? And they did. It was so rudimentary that it wouldn't have been used anyways. It would have not looked like your old-fashioned circle with the, big kind of like the phone dial microphone that they would have had like in the 30s. So it's really funny because Doty originally had drawn a cover back when I was at a different publisher. We were first doing this, where when he first drew it, there was a car. And I'm like, there were no cars in 1900. And then I was doing research, and there's a photo of Houdini driving a old-fashioned car, which is 1900. So I went, oops. A, I have to put this into a script, and B, I have to apologize profusely to Doty after all these years now that I found an actual picture of Harry Houdini in a car in 1900. But after a certain point, you do have to play it somewhat fast and loose with the facts because you're doing historical fiction, but you're doing it but you can't say, but because it's a superhero fiction, you could change things like, oh, this person would have been here, but not here. So, but there are points where I'm like, for a certain character who appears at the end of issue 5, I had to figure out where the heck they would have been, period. And as I kept doing my research, I'm like, okay, so he would have been here. No, he would have been here. No, he would have been here. And then, to me, that was in the final script. This is where he would have been in 1900. But it's a lot of intensive research, a lot of photo reference I have to send to Doty, and he'll do some of his own research as well. And it takes a lot of time because when I'm writing the script, I'm like, okay, I need to find the perfect reference. Go to Google, find the right picture for what I have in mind, and hyperlink it to the Google Doc so Doty knows exactly what I'm talking about. And also you have to pay attention to the clothing, the buildings, vehicles, structures, even hairstyles. You have to be kind of more attentive about. It's always because world building is always tricky. World building in a different time period is like another level of difficulty piled onto that because you want to make it at least close enough to the period to make it believable, without being too distracting and people saying, oh, that wouldn't work. It's always that one or two sticklers that will always say, oh, no, 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 this would never have happened in 1900.
So, what's your approach to diversity and representation in historical fiction?
What's really, I actually was thinking about, I had a feeling this was going to come up. So we were doing like the kind of like the promo thing for my like interview with my publishers because my publisher has this thing called Chat and Draw where you discuss the project, he draws the character. And so my publisher had brought on my editor, Sean Colvin, and she was reading the scripts and she's like, and she actually challenged me on the spot about adding diversity because let's be kind of, I'll be honest, I have a lot of female characters, a lot of women characters in my first arc. I don't have much in the way of, ethnic diversity other than, Italians versus Jews versus Irish versus this. I don't have any black characters or Hispanic characters. So I basically had an idea for what would have been the next arc of American Dreams after this first 5-issue arc. And I pushed it back so I could have an arc which would add much more diversity. Because it's New York, we still have, because there's a large African American community. Chinatown is definitely a big thing in Lower New York, because most are actually placed in the Lower East Side, which is, as you know, is like right catty corner of Chinatown. So I was kind of pushed to add more diversity, and when I sent her the issue 6 script, she's like, Daniel, this is perfect. So I want to, and I'm trying to add more diversity in as I go, because I'm reading through, the first, 3 issues plus what I have, scripted for 4 and 5. It's like, yeah, with one exception, it's pretty much all white people. But I also wrote, right, I was thinking about this today as well, because I had a feeling this was going to come up as well. I write a lot of, for the ensemble, there's a lot more women than there are men. Because you have, just as part of the supporting cast for Jake, you have his sister, you have Nellie Bly, you have his, the character of Annabelle, and you have Emma Goldman. And so there's his mother, who's some of my supporting character, I think, for this first arc, though she does make some arch observations. Like the main male supporting characters in comparison are Eli, his little brother, his father and grandfather, and Harry Houdini. And there's a couple other minor ones, but most of his ensemble supporting cast so far as written have been women. Which I think is a nice little interesting thing to do, especially since these are, because it's always like, always for these period pieces, it's like, oh, these women are trying to climb their way, out of the, under the boot of men. Well, I haven't really done a whole thing about suffragists, so I really think I should, because this is around the time the suffragist movement's really starting to go into kick off. Each of the female characters are in their own way trying to get their own grasp of the American dream. Becky is like kind of defying her parents, is working as a customer for Harry Houdini. Nellie Bly is like the ultimate late 19th century woman who basically, was a trailblazer for women journalists. Emma Goldman is very opinionated, as history knows, and she's not above saying this is wrong, it needs to be fixed by any means. So it's interesting that I have given is a very much a alpha male, Superman archetype, and given him a real supporting cast of women, at least for this first, major arc, which I think is, in retrospect, a really interesting thing, because normally it's like, if you look at something like The Alienist, either the book or the TV series, the only real female character that really is really fleshed out of everyone is the character of Sarah, who is Dakota Fanning's character. like they gave her more of a female supporting cast as well as a villain in this second season, but it's mostly a lot of she has to. A lot of the men are like constantly putting her down, and she's like, "No, I know better than you." And more 9 times out of 10 in the book and in the TV series, Sarah's usually right. So I think and I think because most of my cousins are women, and my grandmother was a very big factor in my life. I think subconsciously, I think I wrote more of a supporting cast of women. Just to make things either different subconsciously, or just in many ways it's because it's what the story called for.
How do you keep the story alive and vibrant?
Well, you have to find a new angle on everything you teach. Because you can't always just be, Jake barging in, punching, and saving the day. Though 9 times out of 10, that's what superhero comics is. You need to challenge him emotionally. You need to challenge him physically, or you need to challenge him, like Emma Goldman in issue 3 basically tells him flat out, right, you're basically being a showman when you could be helping people. You really should be helping people more. So that's a philosophical challenge as well as a physical challenge. It comes up later on in issue 4. But like you have to also keep the audience wanting more. So I have to end on not exactly on a cliffhanger, but like on a thing where it's like a little tease. He's always had a little stinger at the end to have them coming back. Issue 1, it's him, trying to grasp what has happened to him. And in issue 2, he introduces Aleister Crowley. Issue 3 is I won't go into details, but it ends on a very fun, I think, moment where he has to confront someone in the aftermath of his first big fight as a superhero. But you also have to raise the stakes somewhat each time. Not necessarily to say, oh, you have to have an end of the world huge thing. But it could be like in issue 2, we have the giant sweatshop factory fire. That's a major call to action. You need to have that call to action. Basically, again, to challenge your character, and you have to change it up each time somewhat to keep it, fresh. But you also have to make sure the stakes are enough that he could still, lose and lose badly if things go horribly wrong. So you still need to provide, you have to provide a challenge. You have to keep things interesting, and you have to leave your audience somewhat on a hook to find out what happens next. So especially for when you're doing an arc, you can put a button at the end of an arc with it can still be continued with the next arc. But as you're building that arc, you still need to have something that leave your audience wanting to come back for the next issue. So it could be like a major cliffhanger, which will happen at the end of issue 4, or it's a thing that'll introduce a conflict in the subsequent issue, be it physical, mental, philosophical, emotional.
So, what makes for a good Kickstarter campaign, in your opinion?
That's always something I need to figure out because, well, promotion is always the big thing. Like, I could have done better with promotion leading up to it. I could have been a little more successful with that. But you also have to be, really on. I was talking to someone about this earlier tonight. You have to be really on top of your promotion, non-stop. I was posting something every 3 to 4 hours. To promote, I was using Facebook advertising. I was trying to get on podcasts or something just to be able to talk about it. I was trying to make what connections I could to promote it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's almost as much work as it is doing the actual comic.
So, one thing I've always wondered about Kickstarter in particular is does the type of book you create for a Kickstarter campaign change based on just the simple fact that you're on Kickstarter, or is it the same book you would create anyway?
And it's you always want to look for that little X factor, let's let's be fair. There's a bunch of superhero books out there, but each of them have their little X factor, which makes them unique, and that helps you find that audience or bring in an audience. But you also need to, you also have to. The X factor is one thing, but you also have to show you have a quality product. Because the X factor won't necessarily mean anything if you're putting out something that, well, looks terrible. And I've seen some books out there which looks great, but are basically, by the numbers. And some books that are great ideas, but doesn't exactly have the best art so that obviously turns people off. So it's an interesting little tightrope.
So when you're on Kickstarter, how much of the book actually needs to be done before you come out and say, hey, I've got a book to sell?
My publisher's policy is to have the entire book from cover to pages to lettering done and ready to go. Which means, because the idea is to get it out as fast as possible once, everything's funded and everything. So basically, like my publisher, Short Fuse, will have all the page files ready to go. They already have my logo, then they do the trade dress and everything. So they're ready to go as soon as, the Kickstarter is funded to print everything out once, the money comes in. Whereas some people still need the money to finish the book, but they have enough pages they can, show. It's still, but you need to have an idea of how much money is coming in, after Kickstarter gets cut. Like people can do like something early. I know Joe Glass recently had that really big Kickstarter. What was it, like 35,000 British pounds or something like that? Where he had like a good number of the pages done, but he still needed, all that money to complete the book. Or like, to use a non-con example, Critical Role's animation project that they're doing, which I am a backer of, so I can speak from what they've said. And they had a really high goal, which they blasted through into infinity and beyond. But they said the price is so high because the cost is so high, and we don't have the money up front, to do right away. So we need the money so we can actually start production. But it's always better, in my opinion, and the opinion I think I've kind of gathered from what I've learned from my publisher and my observations, it's always better to have as much of the book done beforehand. Just so, you don't run into any nasty surprises.
We're headed up against the end of our show. Are you ready for the fun speculative question segment?
Sure.
Awesome. So what inspires you?
It could be anything. It could be like something it could be music from a show, because I like Broadway. Could be something I just notice, in the news or just as I'm walking by. It could be just like a passing like thought in reaction to something funny I might say to someone, like, "Oh, you know what?" Or it could just be like a random thought that really just pops in my head.
Would you say you're a cat person or a dog person?
I've never had either because I was allergic as a kid, and my dad's still allergic to both. But I'd rather have dogs. Dogs are fun. I think dogs are a little more empathetic to their humans, where cats are more like, feed me, human, feed me now.
Nice. What brings you joy?
Music. I like a lot of Broadway, and also film and general theater scores mainly, and video game scores. I like orchestras.
Nice.
I also like I like oldies from like the 50s or the 80s, but I really do like a good orchestra. And it's like it's something about just how it all comes together. Is all these like 20, 30 instruments just working in concert to create this really lush sound is something I really enjoy.
What's the best swear word?
The best what word?
Swear word.
Oh, that's me. Fuck. It's like the old routine says. It's the most useful, utilitarian, word because you can use it for almost every grammar slot on the planet in English.
That's true. Okay, so if you could change one detail about life on planet Earth, what would it be?
Because I think so many of the problems in this world today is basically selfishness running amok. Like especially now with the whole COVID scenario where people are like refusing to wear masks because it's my freedoms. And it's like no, just be considerate of the health of others. It's not about you; it's about everyone around you.
Oh, it's maddening. Yeah, they do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wake up in the morning one day and you're imbued with superpowers. What are they? And what do you choose to do with them?
Well, being a short, small guy, I would say like super straight for something, but that's not really convenient at the end of the day because everything becomes like cardboard. Um, that's a good question. Maybe just flight or oh no, teleportation. Because given that my main job at work when things are normal is the in-office courier to go to clients or other law firms or court, it would make my getting around so much easier.
You ready for the big one?
Yeah.
Okay, so 100 years from now, NASA throws your entire creative output, a whole lifetime's worth, into a space capsule. Sometime later in deep space, aliens find it.
It's like if this was 100 or 20 years ago, what is life on Earth now that they're looking through? What Earth like then that they're looking at it through a lens from 100 or plus, 120 years ago, or maybe like these action books have a little bit of humor to them. It's like at the end of the day, I want to show them humanity at its best, most possibility, and at its worst as well. But at the end of the day, it's like it's at the end of the day, it's like at the end of the day, we're still mostly good people. That we do strive to be good. Some of us might be more selfish, and some of us might just be utter, assholes. But at the end of the day, we all basically strive for a better day for everyone else,
I
or at least
love
our
it.
loved ones.
That's great. That is a great answer.
Thank you.
So what's next for Daniel Kalban?
Well, I have to plan out this American Dreams issue 4 and 5 Kickstarter. I have a couple other projects in the work. I have a anti-hero book, which may or may not connect to American Dreams, so it will be set in the present, being drawn and inked at the moment. And I have a Western that's being worked on. And hopefully at least a couple of these will be on Kickstarter this year. I also just was part of 2 anthologies that just wrapped up on Kickstarter. Elsewhere Volume 2, all short views contributed a story that connects all of our characters to Elsewhere Volume 2, and I, by myself and then with another artist, did a kind of adventure steampunk short for Project Big Hype. So that should be coming out soon because I think that just wrapped out as well.
Nice. So where can people find you online?
You can find me at most places as Daniel Kalban or D Kalban, or Twitter at Daniel Kalban because D Kalban somehow was taken before I got onto Twitter. And you can find my comics at the Short Fuse store. That would be shortfusemediagroup.com/store. You can find the American Dreams books under the Alignment tab.
Well, my babies, thanks for coming by. It's always so much fun to have you listen to my humble show. I wanted to thank you for listening, for believing in us, and supporting the show financially. Did you know that the people that listen to this show are the best people in the universe? It's a fact. You're beautiful, you're valid, and we appreciate you. And if you would like to support the show, visit us at buymeacoffee.com/EvaIsAdorable offer easy donation options. All money that comes in funds the cost of production and hosting for this show. But the really cool part is that we'll read your comment on the air. Don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And when you do, let me know about it on Twitter, and I'll send you a hug. Because everyone loves hugs, right? Anyway, it's time for the credits. Titular Characters is a show about the things we love. It's produced and hosted by the adorable Eva Webb. That's me. Opening theme by Antonia Marquis. Closing theme by Mikey Flash of Speed Force Music. And that's it, babies. That's all we got. Join us next time for another death-defying adventure on the internet. And when you do, bring candy. Love yas.